Hey everyone, how's it going? It's been a long time since I've made a guide specifically aimed at beginners, so today we're going to be talking about how to reliably land KOs on every single weapon in the game, since that's just the most reliable way to win the game. First up, on sword, you're going to want to learn to downlight into jump recovery. This is very important. Downlight jump recovery is your most consistent KO option. Now the jump is very key because it launches you a little bit higher to get closer to that ceiling kill box. If you just do a downlight normal recovery, it might not KO. Otherwise, your other most consistent option is downlight into side air. This is better if you're closer to the side of the stage, but something to note about both of these options is you're not going to want to jump if you hit on the lower half of the downlight. You'll notice right there, I didn't jump because the downlight launches you slightly upward. We'll see if I do jump, I'm going to overshoot this Nyx, and that's very important. If you hit on the lower half of the GC, like this for example, you're not going to want to jump because otherwise you're going to overshoot. So just downlight into recovery or downlight into side air, like so. Otherwise, there's some characters that can get dodge punishes, like Brawlhalla for example, that can get an even earlier knockout. Let's say they don't have a dodge like this, dodge down. This is going to lead into a knockout. Someone like Jiro can also get that with his downlight into side sig, like so. But these are more complex options, and I talk about them in other videos. Next up, we've got blasters with downlight into dash jump recovery. This is one of the most difficult KO combos in the game to learn, but it is pretty essential if you are a blasters player. The way you do this is you do a downlight, and then instead of chase dodging like this, you're going to want to hold downward as you chase dodge. This will result in a dash. You can also do it by holding diagonal forward. That's what I do because that's way easier. The next part of this combo is where it becomes difficult. As you downlight and dash, you're going to want to jump at the same time. So that's downlight dash jump like that. But you're going to want to release the downward option the moment you jump, because otherwise you're going to get this, which is a downlight into dash jump ground pound. If you do it correctly, a downlight into dash jump and then instantly releasing the downward option and using a recovery, it should look a little bit like this. Now, if you're way close to your opponent like this, instead of doing a dash jump recovery, you're going to want to do a chase dodge diagonal upward into recovery. This is a lot more simple, but it is more position dependent, so you have to be a little bit careful. This also happens when you use it with a GC, like that. Otherwise, with the most recent patch, you can also get into side air as a true combo to get a KO like that, but this is a little bit more damage dependent, it's a little bit more complicated. The other thing that you can learn to do is just a straight up grounded recovery, which on blasters is pretty powerful. Otherwise, just raw siders is pretty good. You do have quite a bit of range and disjoint. You can cover the ledge like that. If someone's trying to recover, this entire ledge area is covered by that side air. Next up is Lance, and unlike those last two, Lance does not have a reliable true killing combo, which means that if you just hit something like this, you're not going to get a guaranteed knockout out of it. But you can get a string like this sidelight into side air. On Lance though, your most consistent option is going to be this side air. Something like a dash jump and then reverse side air like this, a jump dodge side air. Anything like this to get a side air close to the ground is going to be your most reliable grounded killing option. And then of course, if your opponent is jumping in the air, just a jump side air is going to do it. If you catch someone's dodge, you can also get a downlight into jump recovery or a downlight into jump side air as I showed you earlier. I can just also show you right now. Spear does not have any KO options innately on the ground. Endlight won't KO, sidelight won't KO, and downlight won't even hit on the ground. But unlike Lance, you can get a true combo if your opponent's in the air. A downlight into side air like that will KO. A downlight into recovery like that will KO. Your opponent cannot escape those. As for things that are strings, which means your opponent can escape them if they have a dodge, sidelight into side air is somewhat reliable. And then anything other than that is just like, okay, well, you're going to do this on the ground. That's a little bit risky. You can also get side airs close to the ground like this. That's a pretty good option. Kind of similar like Lance, you can fake your opponent out and go for things like that. But most reliably is going to be your aerial killing options with things like downlight into Sair and downlight into recovery. Hammer has perhaps the most basic and straightforward of all the essential KO options in the game. Downlight into jump side air, this is your bread and butter. This is the coach pitch. Day in, day out, game in, game out, you're going to want to use this. Now, it is a little bit difficult if you're just starting out, so what I recommend is when you do this jump side air after the downlight, just press everything all at once. Jump, forward, and attack all at once. Cording that input makes it way easier. Now, in rare circumstances, you might want to downlight into jump nair, depending on if you're more stacked, for example, or if you're using it off a GC. Sometimes nair is more reliable. That's a falling nair if you use it and you're way above them. Kind of like sword, you're going to want to do it like that. Or if they're jumping, for example, in the air, a downlight into jump nair might KO earlier. There's also character-specific things like downlight and sig, and then health-specific things like this. That's a little more complicated, though. Alright, going from one of the simplest to one of the most complicated weapons to KO with, katars do not have a true killing combo, which means if you hit like this, it's not guaranteed. If you hit like this, it's not guaranteed. But if they don't have a dodge, if you catch their dodge, endlight into jump recovery is one of your most most reliable. Downlight into jump recovery is not. You're going to want to downlight into normal recovery. Now, depending on position, this gets a little more complicated. If they're like this, you do want to jump recovery. And katars are a weapon that I'm going to highlight. You want to kill off stage a lot. Now, of course, every weapon you can KO off stage, but katars is one of the ones that excels at it. Like blasters, I also recommend trying to learn how to do grounded recovery. This is a little bit more niche, but it is a potential option that you can KO on the ground with. Now, it's a little difficult. You don't want to do it too close to the ground because then you get a side sig or you get an end sig. So learning the exact position when to execute this is, it takes a little bit of practice, but you can learn it in a session or two. Although axe seems simple, there's actually a few things you want to keep in mind. So although sidelight into Sair is an option like that, you can see it is possible to dodge depending on how you hit it. So you're gonna want to hit it like really close inward with the late frames of the move. That's how you get it as a true combo. It's a little bit difficult and unreliable, but right there, that was true. Otherwise, your opponent's just going to be able to escape it with a dodge, with a jump, or anything like that. So your most reliable KO option is actually just going to be a raw side air or a raw end light. These are the two things that you're going to want to look out for the most. And then side light Sair sometimes, depending on the position, if you can get that a little bit accurate. Right there, you can tell that one was not true because they were too high. Whereas this one, that one might be, that one might be. That one was definitely, because that was in there. Knowing when sidelight Sair is and isn't true is something that you'll pick up more on as you play more axe. Like that one just wasn't true. This one definitely isn't true, but this one, that one might be. It depends on hitting with the latter half of the move, like I mentioned, and also the position that the opponent gets launched up, because that one is way closer to the hitbox, whereas this one is way further away. That's why raw Sair and raw end light are your most consistent killing options, because getting a combo off a sidelight is a little unreliable depending on how you hit it. Yeah, that worked. Now going back to a little bit more of the basics, downlight into jump recovery on bow, kind of like sword, is your most consistent KO option. Depending on how you hit it though, you might miss it like that. If you hit it a little too close, you're not going to want to do that. You're just going to want to do a jump into nair, because that's going to be more reliable. It's not going to KO as early, but at least you get a hit at all. Otherwise, bow is another weapon that I want to highlight, not for me though, because I'm apparently not a good gamer, as getting KOs off stage, because it is capable of getting those super early knockouts, since pretty much all of its aerial moves other than nair send downward. Something to note is that this doesn't KO until pretty late. Bow is one of those weapons that builds up a lot of damage, has a lot of control, but does struggle to get those knockouts, so you really do want to push people off stage, kind of like katars, get those knockouts early, rob them of their jumps, so that they're not actually dying at like 170, but rather you're stealing their jumps from them, then they can't recover. Game, set, match. Gauntlets can also struggle quite a bit. There are some complex grounded killing options like this. I'm not going to get into this today because this is honestly a whole video on its own. Boomy has a great one on it. But there are some things on stage that you can do, like a downlight into dash jump side air, for example, kind of similar to the dash jump recovery on blasters, except instead of doing a recovery, you're just doing a side air. There's also downlight sidelight into recovery as a string, and sidelight recovery. Wow. Sidelight recovery is going to be one of the most reliable strings. This is something that is dodgeable. If your opponent has a dodge, they can't escape this. I'll just show you like right here. I can't get this. No matter what I do. If you do catch a dodge though, this is very reliable. Like the sword, you're gonna want to jump first if you want to get that knockout earlier, because that's just a little bit more height. It's very, very subtle. I mean, you're not going to notice a difference here based on the killing range that I have right now, but this jump is going to make a difference. And if you don't do it and then you lose the game because of it, it sucks. That's happened to me before. There are quite a bit of setups to get that sidelight into recovery. So a sidelight into GC sidelight recovery, for example, this covers a bunch of options. You can also do it the other way around and get this like that. And then depending on how you delay your recovery, you can also get a downlight into delayed recovery, get the KO like that. If someone's like trying to jump up or jump out, you can also do that. It takes some reading to get the KOs with gauntlets oftentimes, but it is consistent as long as you get that first step. Otherwise, raw recoveries are also a great option. This hitbox was nerfed, so you're not actually going to be able to get it super close to the ground like that. Even though it looks like it could hit, this one is still going to miss because that hitbox, like I mentioned, was nerfed. So this takes some learning of grounded recoveries and also just catching people in the air. Oftentimes people just jump because they want to avoid that sidelight. That's the wrong option. They're jumping like this, so you can get something like that, for example, catch someone jumping. And of course, gauntlets is another weapon that I have to highlight off stage because, of course, I mean, that's just a given. Speaking of off stage, scythe is pretty much the poster child of it's a little difficult to get KOs on stage, but then getting knockouts off stage is more reliable. That apparently was a true combo. Yeah, it is difficult just to say here's how you reliably KO with the weapon, since it is so nebulous. It depends on context, your opponent's dodge, your amount of dodge, everyone's dodge. But something to note is that you do have reliable strings out of all of your grounded options. So end light into Sair, this is a potential option. Soft sidelight into Sair, potential option. Downlight into Sair, potential option. But again, this depends on your opponent's dodge. Also position, sometimes things can get weird. You can do a soft sidelight into recovery, for example, like that. That's sometimes an option. But yeah, Scythe, this is why it's one of the most challenging weapons in the game, because getting just reliable KOs can be so difficult, and really you want to pull people off stage, rob them of their jumps early. That way, look, I didn't get the KOs super early from blasting them across the map like, I don't know, Axe would, but I still got it from getting their options stolen super early with my priority. Great hitboxes. I mean, Scythe is one of those weapons that it pretty much can beat everything depending on its positioning. If you position right, you'll always have good priority with your range, with your different diagonal hitboxes. So it's one of those weapons that takes a lot of practice to getting these knockouts reliably, but once you do, it's not going to be conventionally, but it's still going to be early. Thankfully, cannon is a lot more straightforward. Downlight jump nair, all day, every day. Downlight jump nair, downlight jump nair. This is your bread and butter. Except sometimes it's actually not, because it doesn't work, because this nair does have a little bit of a blind spot in your character model. If you hit on the lower half of the downlight, you're actually just going to want to do a falling nair, kind of like sword downlight, kind of like blasters. Sometimes you also want to do a downlight into chase dodge, depending on the position, like that, for example, if you're a little bit further out. Something to remember is that if you hit with the upper half of this move, the downlight hits in the air, for example, jump nair, always reliable. All reliable. This hitbox is insane. I mean, you're noticing it's hitting the Nyx in the air like this. Look at this. Look at this. This is a killing combo. It hits up here. What is this? What is this? That's your jump nair. But if you hit closer to the ground or closer to the edge, sometimes you're going to want to do a chase dodge. Sometimes you're going to want to do a falling nair. This takes a little bit of practice and just playing some cannon to learn the ins and outs. To be honest, I still don't know them. Orb has one of the most consistent and reliable KO options, but it's also one of the most challenging. Sidelight into side air does get knockouts. It KOs somewhat late. Orb is not the earliest killing weapon in the game, kind of like bow. And this is super reliable, but the input is quite tight. This is also something that I recommend just courting the input. You're going to want to sidelight, jump, side air, and forward, or jump, attack, and forward to get the side air all at once, because this is challenging. This takes some practice. I recommend spending time in training mode. You'll notice if I'm just even slightly off, dodge window of 3. That's big. So you got to be super accurate, because otherwise even that dodge window of 1, you gotta practice this one. Otherwise, a more niche option is a downlight into side air if you have momentum. This has to hit on the lower half of the downlight as they're grounded to get this bounce upward. Otherwise, you're gonna notice you can't hit anything. You can also get a downlight into recovery with this setup. It kind of depends on position. Sair is usually more reliable, but sometimes recovery will kill earlier. Again, side air doesn't kill until pretty late, but this is pretty niche. Sidelight into side air is what you want to spend most of your time learning, because this is your bread and butter. This it gets the knockouts, because the sidelight downlight doesn't like that. You gotta do it like that. Yay. Finally, we have greatsword, which, like Scythe, is a little bit challenging just to give you a here's how you reliably kill all the time, but I will give you the most consistent finishers as well as a couple other options to look out for. So, if you don't know, greatsword has a starter, a bridge, and a finisher if you use 3 moves in a row. These are all unique, and it depends entirely on the context of the match, because let's say you do a starter into a starter, it's actually going to finish as a finisher, and sometimes your opponent's dodge is on cooldown where this is actually the best option. It depends a lot. So the most basic thing to know is that if you start with a sidelight, or if you start with an endlight, and you do a downlight next, you're going to get this sliding option. This sliding option is your most reliable lead up into the finisher. So the sliding into a sidelight, the sliding into an endlight, and the sliding into a downlight, depending on how your opponent is positioned, is going to be your most reliable finisher. So what does this look like in gameplay? Well, I do have a full video dedicated just to understanding how to KO with greatsword, because it's a lengthy topic, but very briefly, let's say you catch your opponent's dodge, right? They're dodging to the right, you can get this sidelight into sidelight, downlight, sidelight as an example. But if they're jumping, for example, this might not work. You're going to have to mix it up with an endlight, for example. Sidelight, downlight, endlight if they're jumping up in the air. Also, depending on situation, the downlight finisher might be better, because you can actually get it true out of the bridge sidelight. Not like that. Like this. And so it really depends on context, but the most basic thing to know is that if you reliably use those 3 options, it's going to be way more consistent than trying to go for something like that, where that's super jumpable. I know that might be a bit overwhelming, so just basic, it's sidelight downlight into sidelight, or sidelight downlight into endlight, or sidelight downlight into downlight, or endlight downlight into sidelight, endlight downlight into endlight, or endlight downlight into downlight. I might have made it worse, but hopefully me saying that over and over gets into your head that the downlight comes second. As for other options, if you GC into a light attack, it'll always be the finisher version. Now keep in mind this is a weaker version of the finisher than you would get otherwise in a full string, but it is still potentially an option. This downlight, for example, is usually the best one to use. The sidelight takes a little bit of time, but it's a pretty good extension. And then the endlight takes a lot of time, but it can be pretty good at covering an entire area like that, for example. Another thing you can do is as a string, downlight, or down air, sorry, into nair. This is a pretty good string. It used to be a true combo, no longer. And then otherwise, I mean, yeah, is a recovery. I don't know why I set the damage higher. That made sense in my head. Yeah, this move is just so good. You'll see people use this all the time, fishing for this on the ground. This is your other most reliable KO option because it just has a billion force. And getting a downlight into nair, for example, or down air into nair, I don't know why I keep saying downlight. It's a little complicated. Just getting one hit of a recovery, way simpler. All right, I started to fall apart in the end there a little bit, but that's okay. My voice is getting a bit raspy. That's just basic how to KO with every weapon. Of course, I didn't cover everything, but hopefully, if you are a beginner, this is a place to start. It might be a bit overwhelming, but I promise you, you spend a little bit of time in training mode, in practice, you're going to get everything down super quick, way faster than you think, and that's it.